Any student of colonial history will confirm that perhaps the smartest decision that the British made was the Lagos-Kano Rail, an amalgamation of the Lagos-Ibadan and the Barrow-Kano Rail in 1912. This sparked off the creation of other rail routes across the country, such that by 1930, there was a unified rail system in 4 districts. Following the Lagos-Kano plot, the rail routes were to move goods and commerce from the Nigerian hinterland to the coast for export. So the Western District tapped agricultural produce such as cocoa for export. The Northern District focused on the traffic of groundnuts and cotton, while the Northeast, headquarters in Bauchi, and the Eastern District, with headquarters in Enugu, developed the coal region and the evacuation of oil palm and palm produce. I've taken this very quick historical digression to demonstrate that any serious planning of local and international commerce in Nigeria must take the Lagos-Kano connection seriously, especially its catalytic role for commerce across the country. This is why Their Excellencies, the governors of Lagos and Kano, deserve our profound commendation for this landmark gathering. This summit, for the first time, brings together 2 of Nigeria's most demographically significant states and its major centers of commerce, with a combined share of 37% of our national GDP, to explore opportunities for leveraging their individual and combined economic potentials for the benefit of their citizens and the entire country. As salespeople will say, this is truly a buy one, get one free opportunity for investors, policymakers, and all who have a stake in the economic future of Nigeria. It's not out of place to say that by virtue of their commercial and demographic importance, where Lagos and Kano go, so Nigeria follows. The clout of the 2 cities extends beyond the borders of Nigeria. Lagos is arguably the most important coastal city in all of Africa, just as Kano has historically served as a major crossroad on the trans-Saharan trade route that stretches into the Mediterranean. Years doing so. I think Lagos and Kano states have, by this collaboration, understood a cornerstone federal government's economic recovery and growth plan, namely the leveraging of synergies among states and the private sector. The strategic role of the federal government is to create an environment for commerce, beginning with the provision of infrastructure. For us, what this means, especially in the context of the Lagos and Kano collaboration, is the refurbishing of the narrow gauge Lagos to Kano rail. The concession to General Electric, which proposes to invest almost $2 billion in ensuring that the rail route is effective for the movement of cargo from the Apapa port to Kano. Similarly, we're investing in a Lagos to Kano standard gauge line. The Lagos-Ibadan portion of that is expected to be ready by the end of this year. Also, we have budgeted 80 billion naira for the development of special economic zones in the 6 geopolitical zones of the country. Part of the plan is to develop Nigeria as the garment manufacturer to the world, using the Lagos SEZ as a garment manufacturing hub, especially because we have become cost competitive, as has been pointed out, with higher costs of production due to higher wages in China. So most of the so-called sunset industries in China are looking for a destination. And it is clear that Lagos is that destination, but there is a natural synergy between the textile industry in Kano, which had before now declined due to unfair competition from cheap Chinese imports. So we expect to see the resuscitation of the Kano textile industry in response to the garment manufacturing demand in Lagos. Power has remained a major cost factor and an inhibitor for the expansion of industrial activity in Nigeria. We have taken a multidimensional approach by working on both off-grid and on-grid solutions led by the private sector. So by May this year, we'll be adding 450 megahertz to the national grid when the Azura project in Edo goes live. This is the first fully privately financed power plant in Nigeria. And test power of about 30 to 50 megahertz is now on the grid, preparatory to the May start-off. At the same time, we're putting off-grid solar capacity in small industrial clusters in key commercial centers. In collaboration with the Kano State government, we are, with a wholly owned Nigerian company, installing a solar standalone system to power the Sabon Gari market. When completed, it will provide power for 12,000 of the shops and enterprises there. At the moment, it's providing power to about 1,000 shops. The assembly plant for the system itself is in Kano. In Lagos, we're looking at possible power solutions also for the printers in the Shomolu printing cluster. As I said, our emphasis is on small business. The interventions that we're trying to make is on small business clusters. And in collaboration with the Lagos State government and the private sector owner of the IPP at Marina, we're building a distribution network that will take metered power to the Sura market. In our area market in Aba, we are working with a wholly owned company to supply power to our area market's 31,000 through a dedicated gas-fired IPP. Now, this is already the largest SME hub in West Africa. All these are locally manufactured, and electricity will be 20% cheaper than what they currently pay. We expect that in the next few months, mobile payments will come on stream. In other words, people will be able to make payments from their mobile phones. And we expect that this will greatly assist the retailing of power to small businesses, amongst other businesses. At the moment, there's a 4% charge on payment platforms for making these kinds of payments. But once we get mobile systems going, mobile payment systems going, that charge will, of course, become much more competitive. Lagos have also proved that the federal system we operate of state is not necessarily meant to make states islands unto themselves, also to strengthen our corporate and national commercial appeal. Both states are the frontline states in the ease of doing being implemented by the Presidential Enabling Business Environment Council, which I have the privilege of chairing. Not only are both key members of the council, they've also demonstrated remarkable support and collaboration since the reform started. By working together, we achieved reforms in the processes around the issuance of construction permits and the registration of property. On account of these reforms and others, as you've heard, we were last year adjudged by the World Bank as one of the top 10 most improved economies in the world. PEBEC is thankful for this enthusiasm and collaboration of Governors Akinwumi Ambode and Abdullah Omar Ganduje and the administration, and all of the support they've shown for the work of PEBEC. And it is that same enthusiastic collaboration that is being manifested today in this first of a kind joint economic and investment summit. This year, we're working again collaboratively to achieve reform of enforcing contracts, registering property, and the issuance of construction permits. Success in these areas will put us firmly on the path of achieving our goal of being a top 100 economy by 2020. Permit me to take a quick peek into the future, which, as is often said, is already here with us. One of the key drivers of economic prosperity is competition. In this case, competition among subnationals or states and nations. As the world becomes flatter with technology, that will become even more the case. One great example comes to mind of how this competition might play out. In 2017, just last year, Amazon, the American retail and technology giant, announced plans to open a second headquarters in North America. What was interesting was that instead of making the decision entirely an in-house one, as companies usually do, Amazon chose to let the cities across the United States, Canada, and Mexico bid for what you might call the hosting rights for the headquarters too, as the project later came to be known. More than 200 cities submitted bids, and Amazon announced a short list of 20 cities just last month. A final announcement of the winning city is now pending. I'm not so sure whether Kano and Lagos also put in their bids. The city that, why is all this important? The city that will host Amazon's headquarters will enjoy more than $5 billion in construction $5 billion US dollars, that is, in construction investment alone. Not to talk of tens of thousands of direct jobs and indirect jobs that Amazon will bring to the city, and the multiplier effect on local transportation, on hospitality, entertainment, and additional investments that other companies will bring because of Amazon's presence in the city. Now think about what this development might mean for Nigeria in the decades ahead, when companies make important decisions about siting their offices and headquarters and industries, primarily based on how easy a state makes it for people to do business in it. States that make it easy for investors to acquire land, to register property, to pay taxes, and access to broadband internet will be the clear winners, while states that make things or impossible will languish as the world carries on. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, that competitive scenario that I've just outlined is the future of the world. Indeed, there are theorists and thinkers who now argue that going by the current and projected rates of urbanization, cities, not countries, will propel the economies of the future and ultimately determine the fate of humankind. Of course, it may sound far-fetched right now to imagine that city economies will in some way replace nation-states in global importance. But you only need to know the fact that in many cases, cities around the world existed than the countries to which they belong. Lagos and Kano are as much cities as they are states. Both predate the existence of Nigeria. Long before Nigeria existed as we know it today, both cities existed as important regional centers of trade and commerce. It is a given that they will continue well into the future, increasingly gaining clout and influence with the opening up of national borders across West Africa and even the entire African continent. There will be even more room for both cities to assert themselves economically, to seize rapidly emerging opportunities, to ride the waves of investment and innovation, to become truly globally competitive, and to show the way to the rest of Nigeria. On our part, the federal government will support the efforts of all state governments to reform their economies, to attract investment, and to collaborate with one another. The days when the federal government would seek to undermine governors and their administrations are now well behind us. The state governors, I'm sure that the state governors will be the first to attest to the fact that President Buhari is deeply committed to helping every state in Nigeria achieve its full economic potential. We are seeing unprecedented levels of national, subnational engagement today, especially through the mechanism of the National Economic Council. One of the driving philosophies of that council is fiscal transparency. As a federal government, we've been careful not to hold back information from the states because we realize that development can only happen in an atmosphere of trust and collaboration. Over the next 2 days, there will be robust conversations around governance, infrastructure, fiscal matters, tourism, security, the knowledge economy, and other issues. And I'm confident that these discussions will throw up useful insights and opportunities for learning, all of which, of course, I'm sure will be documented for future relevance. I'm also confident that investors and businesses will leave this summit with increased knowledge about the opportunities for investment in Lagos and Kano, and with greater optimism for the future. The federal government will be paying serious attention to the outcomes of this summit to help guide and direct our engagements with the states. Let me again commend Governors Ganduje and Ambode for this historic business and investment summit, and to commend Governor Ganduje for making the journey, a rather long journey, all the way to Lagos. I must also say that Governor Ambode deserves special mention for his farsightedness in establishing this collaboration, working with Governor Atiku Bagudu of Kebbi on the famous lake rice, and even leasing land from Ogun State to grow rice, which I think is another act of collaboration. Very well done. While thanking you for your attention, ladies and gentlemen, it's now my very special pleasure and privilege to declare this summit formally open. Thank you.